There's a subtle pressure many visionaries feel right now to soften their voice, to play sort of smaller, to wait for some kind of permission. But what if 2026 is not asking you to contract at all, but to stand more firmly in who you already are? This conversation is about refusing to shrink without losing your voice. Welcome back to another episode of Healthy Mind, Healthy Life, where we explore what it truly means to build a life that is grounded, aligned, and sustainable from the inside out. My guest today is Taryn LaRae Gordon, a business strategist, speaker, and founder of LaRae's Business Hub. Following the loss of her father and lifelong business partner, she rebuilt not just a brand, but a movement centered on inner governance, alignment, and legacy leadership. This episode, we're going to explore why visionaries must not shrink themselves in 2026 and what it takes to lead with integrity, authority, and emotional wholeness in uncertain times. So, to all those young entrepreneurs who have just tuned in right now, I welcome you all. And Taryn, it's a pleasure to have you here on the show today.
Thank you so much, Diane. It's a pleasure to be here.
Likewise. Before we talk about leadership and vision and what kind of message do we essentially want to pass down to the young entrepreneurs and the business owners listening to this right now? After everything you have worked personally and professionally, I would love to start there. What does not shrinking mean to you or begin to mean for you in real life terms?
Well, it meant not undermining myself. A lot of people come up in institutions where they have people speaking into them, and it causes them to basically betray their own inner voice, betray their own inner trust. And thankfully, I've always had my dad along the way to help guide me and build that confidence that I needed so that I can always lean into myself. Because our highest self, that priority comes from our inner voice. That's where we lean and get our guidance from. As it pertains to me and in my realities, it meant for me to not betray my talents, not betray my gifts, not betray multi-talents that I had, not betray my skill sets, not betray my intellect. And that means not dumbing myself down around people that were threatened by my intelligence. It meant not dumbing my talents down. And so for my lived reality, it meant being true and authentic to my higher purpose. It meant being honest about the steps that will allow me to gain the traction that I needed to fulfill the blueprint of my life.
Right. Thanks for being loud and clear. Right. On the first question of this podcast show. And I think there's a common belief that humility means dimming your presence or softening your authority.
Yep.
And I could say the same for modesty as well. I don't know. But why do you think so many visionaries confuse shrinking with being responsible or grounded or authentic?
It's funny that you're asking this question because I was watching a movie on Netflix, Death by Lightning, and it talked about the President Garfield, I believe, that was basically, assassinated, only a few weeks into office. And one of the things that I saw in his own sense of leadership was that he was mistaking humility for leadership. And his wife was telling him when people came to compliment him or when people came to get direction from him, he was mistaking those compliments as putting him on a pedestal or seeing himself as a savior in a sense. And he didn't necessarily want to be seen as a savior. And she had to correct him by saying, it's not about you rescuing people, but it is about you giving direction because you are the leader. People are looking for you to guide. A lot of people, they are mistaking humility or modesty for something else when it's coming across wrong. It's misaligned with the alignment for their role as leaders. And another thing too is that a lot of people have been taught that humility and modesty means not giving yourself praise, not giving yourself a pat on the back,
Right.
not giving yourself celebration when it's needed. And so you begin to hide who you are because of the fact that you no longer celebrate yourself. You are allowed and given yourself permission to feel good about your accomplishments. You are allowed to express your highest self. But when we are in certain class settings or in certain status settings or in certain institutions, people have been groomed to walk in humility because also it may be a sign of not stepping forward and outpacing somebody else. So it's a way of, in a sense, shrinking you, and then you become accustomed to not giving yourself praise. You become accustomed to thinking humility is me being prideful or modesty is me being boastful when it's really not that.
Yeah, I mean, and I think this is a very common thing that you said because people sometimes blur the line between knowing your worth versus not letting you have a sense of your worth when you are worthy enough. And I think that happens maybe consciously for some people, unconsciously for others. It's just because of the environment that they're in right now. It's because it's often so perceived that we should not basically be making a lot of noise within ourselves, right? And we should be like self-contained. So if we stay with that in a layer for a moment, I want to ask, in your work, I mean, where do you see this root cause of shrinking? Where does this actually come from if you talk psychologically, let's say?
Okay. Well, I just want to be clear that my work isn't clinical. It's more based on lived experience. So I'm gonna speak from that perspective. Yeah, I'm gonna speak
Absolutely.
from that. So one of the things that we have in the business hub is a clearing call. Speak, build, believe. Speak, build, believe. It's a rallying cry that you can speak into yourself. Speak, build, believe. Now, how that kind of came about is because one of the things that I saw was that a lot of people, they're stripped from their own voice. Where you speak, your feet follows. So when you speak life into yourself, when you speak authority into yourself, your feet is going to follow. Your movement is going to follow where your words are being spoken out in the atmosphere. But we have to assume that everybody has not come up in an environment where their voice mattered. We have to
Mm.
assume that everybody hasn't come up in an environment where their thoughts were heard, their opinions were processed correctly. And so people have to rebuild an inner world where there's authority in their voice. They have to rebuild an inner world where there's confidence in what they're saying. And then it also piggybacks to who is speaking into you, who is accessing your thoughts, who is accessing your pain points, who is accessing your vulnerability. But when you speaking life into yourself, that's the first thing. And then you can go from speaking life into yourself and not shrink yourself, but you begin to go against that root cause of diminishing that confidence, diminishing that low value, diminishing that sense of insecurity. The root cause and what I've seen, and even in my own experience, is the stripping of self. That's the root cause. That somebody is literally able to take your agency from you based on your circumstances, based on your conditions. If somebody is able to steal the authorship of your life, then they basically have control. And so part of my work is helping people reclaim their voice. It's helping people to reclaim their identity. It's helping people to reclaim their sense of self, reclaim their ownership, reclaim their entrepreneurship. So I believe that it really does start at the root of having no
Yeah.
voice.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's very well framed, Atine. Thanks for that. I think it's striking how often leadership challenges are really unprocessed factors that are asking to be addressed, not ignored. But for someone who's listening to this right now, who knows that they have been holding back, all right, what does a healthier, a more aligned way forward actually look like for them? I mean, where should they start?
Where should they
It is
start?
because
Realign.
you don't yeah, because you don't want to play the victim card at some point in your life. Rather, you don't want to look at people around you and blame them for the cause, right? That you are
Right.
in. And I believe everyone should start somewhere down the line at themselves. So I'm just curious to know what's your perspective on that.
I have a video on my YouTube channel, and it's called The Three Tiered Societal System. And it asks the question, are you a visionary? Are you a manager or are you a consumer? Because to me, I feel like everybody can fit one of those three roles. The misalignment happens when you're positioning yourself in a role that you're not supposed to be. There are a lot of people that are visionaries, and we talk about shrinking themselves, that are undermining themselves and they're taking the back seat when they should be in the front. And then you have people that are positioned, their character, their traits, what they were born into this world to do is to help harvest someone's ideal. But there are a lot of people that may even have ideals. You're not called to be the CEO of that ideal, but you can't tell them. It starts with that misalignment. Once you figure out first, what role should I be in? Am I a visionary or am I a manager? Should I be getting with someone to help them engine and power their great idea? Or am I a consumer? Because not everybody is called
Yeah.
on a Fortune 500 company, and not everybody is called to power somebody's vision forward either. But you can still be a conscious consumer. And that means you can be conscious and aware of what you're spending your products on, what you're spending your money on for these products. You don't have to buy into deadbeat companies. You don't have to buy into companies that are pushing slave labor. If your role is to be a consumer in this world, you can still be a conscious consumer. And so I believe that the first step is figuring out where you are in this three-tiered societal system and then moving forward in what you're called to do in this life.
Wow, I mean, I haven't seen your YouTube video, but I have the same self belief because I was just about to come to this in the last part of this conversation that not everyone could be a leader, right? And
Nope.
it's hard. I mean, we have wanted to be leader, but I think people, those who are great leaders, are shaped by their early lived experience, right? I mean, I'm not saying that you're born with leadership qualities, okay? Like maybe one in, statistically saying one in, okay, a million. But most of the time, what so happens is the skills are inculcated in you in the early days, right? So it's very important, I mean, to first identify whether or not you fit as a leader. So, Taryn, could you quickly share maybe a couple of things, or maybe more than that, that would help people identify if they fit into this natural role or not? So, when you talk about leadership, when you talk about visionaries, I think it all has to be around good leadership. So, what do you think about that?
Okay, so I do want to just kind of course correct something. And that is not to say that leaders and visionaries are the same thing, because you can be a leader in your household and your job may be to be a manager. If
Okay,
you
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So everybody may not be the leader of a Fortune 500 company in terms of entrepreneurship. But if you are leading your household, you have leadership qualities, you have leadership
That might.
ability. Yeah. Now, what I would say in terms of those leadership abilities, those leadership qualities, a person will have to have a sense of organization, for instance. That person may be able to multitask. That person may have emotional regulation. And so when I talk about emotional regulation, you can be talking about emotional regulation and emotional mastery. That can be the difference between a leader in your home and a leader in an entrepreneurial sense. Because if you don't have emotional mastery, you can't lead a charge. You can't lead a team. But if you have some sort of emotional regulation, maybe you can lead your home. Maybe you can make sure your kids are getting to school. Maybe you can make sure that your wife has lunch money when she goes to work, but you're not in the position to lead a team of people and have them follow you. So it really does depend on what gifts and qualities do you have in terms of your own leadership abilities. And that takes self assessment. But really, the role of a leader, they have organization. Like I said, they have some sense of emotional regulation. They are aligned in their responsibilities. They understand decision making. They have some sort of autonomy and they know how to lean into that autonomy. But when you're talking about the difference between leading a household and leading a company, now we're going into different layers,
Different scale,
uh,
right?
yeah, different scales of those same traits.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, sustainable leadership, it is. Less about, I believe, pushing harder and more about standing rooted even at
Yep.
uncertain times, right? So I think that's another innate quality that real leaders should possess. Because my key takeaway from this conversation has been, I think shrinking is not safety, but alignment is. That's what I also want to remind every one of you listening to this right now. So thank you so much, Taryn, for bringing this kind of honesty into this conversation. And I'm sure there are a lot of business owners listening to this right now and young entrepreneurs as well. So I just want to thank you for your time today. And with that, we come to an end to today's episode on Healthy Man, Healthy Life. And if today's conversation really resonated with you, just let it be a reminder that your presence matters, because we all are indeed a community, and your vision does not need to be diluted to be responsible. Until next time, please to take care of your inner world, because that's where everything lasting begins.